Donald Trump's national security strategy is basically a complete reprisal or response to the China-Russia threat to the petrodollar, right? So there's a great article here in leakofnations.com, and it was written by Kaiser Soze, obviously a pseudonym, but it goes into the 55-page America First National Security Strategy, the NSS, drafted over the course of 2017, which defines Russia and China as revisionist powers, quote, rivals and for all practical purposes, strategic competitors of the United States. This article is very long, and I would suggest reading it. I'll obviously touch on some of it. But what this talks about is why China and Russia have been figuring out how to circumvent using the US dollar. We've talked about this a lot, the petrodollar. And when Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi Saddam Hussein said, I'm not going to use the dollar anymore. I'm going to sell my oil in euros. Wow, we went and invaded him and killed him. Same thing with Gaddafi, right? So you're wondering why are all these other dictators allowed to run free? Because they're not oil. They probably don't have oil. And if they are, they're playing ball by using the US dollar. What has been slowly happening is China and Russia have set up, and some of it's pretty complicated, and I barely understand it. Some of you might understand it more than I have if you've been studying this at great detail. But basically, they've been using the Chinese yuan, or however that's pronounced, Y-U-A-N, yuan, to trade. And they're already setting this up. So this explains so much of what's going on. This explains the Russiagate. The two main reasons for the Russiagate are obviously this and defense contractors. We need Russia. We need another Cold War so that the defense contractors can justify this. But it's why, I was just watching CNN. To see what kind of bullshit they were spewing. And wow, lo and behold, there's new shocking photographs of China selling oil to North Korea. Can we trust them? They've been doing that for a long time. And then Trump, of course, tweets, caught red-handed. This isn't good. So what this is all about, we talked about this, everything is about the petrodollar, the arms race, and the arms and the petrodollar are very, very, very interconnected. So when we put sanctions on Russia in 2014, they're like, how can we do business? So Russia and China have been circumventing us to do this. So it's fascinating, and it explains so much of this. It explains why all of Trump's cabinet is climate change denier, and why the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was the former CEO of ExxonMobil, right? And why those companies are so, they're scared. And that's why they double down. That's why, when neoliberals are like, oh, Hillary's, she's all liberal and peace and feminism. It's like, oh, really? Is that why the Saudis gave to her foundation, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs? Boeing. It's ridiculous. So here's what's going what's going on. Let me read some excerpts here. The NSS, this is the National Security Strategy. This is the 55-page report that just came out. Stop short of defining Russia and China as enemies, allowing for an attempt to build a great partnership with those in other countries. Still, Beijing qualified it as reckless and irrational. The Kremlin noted its imperialist character and disregard for the multipolar world. Iran, predictably, is described by the NSS as the world's most significant state sponsor of terrorism. It's because they have a bunch of oil and they don't want to do business with us. That's why Iran is suddenly a bunch of terrorists. Saudi Arabia has a bunch of oil, and they are a totalitarian country that is currently responsible, along with our help, for 130 children a day, every day, dying in Yemen. See how this works? Which is why Russia and Iran want to put a pipeline through Syria, and we're against that. That's why, and then Clinton as Secretary of State and Obama, they all did this. They're all part of this. So let me go into this. So the NSS can certainly be regarded as a response to what happened at the BRICS summit in Xiamen last September. Then Russian President Vladimir Putin insisted that the BRIC countries, so the BRIC countries, just so you know, they are the, where's that definition of BRIC countries? Insisted on the BRIC countries' concerns over the unfairness of the global financial and economic architecture, which does not give due regard to the growing weight of the emerging economies, and stressed the need to overcome the excessive domination of a limited number of reserve currencies. That was a clear reference to the US dollar, which accounts for nearly 2/3 of the total reserve currency around the world and remains the benchmark determining the price of energy and strategic raw materials. Oh, this is so, I'm sorry. This is. So the website of the China Foreign Exchange Trade System, CFETS, recently announced the establishment of a yuan ruble payment system, hinting that similar systems regarding other currencies participating in the new Silk Road's AK Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, will also be in place in the near future. Crucially, this is not about reducing currency risk. After all, Russia and China have increasingly traded bilaterally in their own currency since the 2014 U.S.-imposed sanctions on Russia. This is about the implementation of a huge new alternative reserve currency zone bypassing the U.S. dollar. The decision follows the establishment by Beijing in October 2015 of the China International Payment System, CIPS. CIPS has a cooperation agreement with the private Belgium-based SWIFT International Bank Clearing System, through which virtually every global transaction must transit. What matters in this case is that Beijing, as well as Moscow, clearly read the writing on the wall when in 2012, Washington applied pressure on SWIFT, blocked international clearing for every Iranian bank, and froze the $100 billion in Iranian assets overseas, as well as Tehran's potential to export oil. In the event Washington might decide to slap sanctions on China, bank clearing system through CIPS works as a de facto sanctions evading mechanism. Going back to George Bush, after the invasion of Iraq, and everyone was gearing up for Iran, and Iran was one of the axis of evil. Iran was trying to back-channel peace with the Bush administration, saying, look, we don't want what you're doing. We don't want war here. That cleric was a nut job, but he was like, he doesn't really run the country, and we've got a young population that's very much into Western culture, and they're college educated. Many of them have gone to school in Western Europe and America. We don't want this. Bush shut it down. Right? So here's what else is essential in this strategy. Gold. Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa are all either large producers or consumers of gold, or both. Following what has been extensively discussed in their summits in the early 2010s, the BRICS are bound to focus on trading physical gold. Markets such as COMEX actually trade derivatives on gold and are backed by an insignificant amount of physical gold. Major BRIC gold producers, especially the Russia-China partnership, plan to be able to exercise extra influence in setting up global gold prices. Right? So this is shaking up everything. JP Morgan has been talking about this for at least 5 years publicly, right? And so here's the other thing. If the House of Saudi, right, why we need them so much and why we'll let them do whatever they want. Because if the House of Saudi decides to accept this yuan ruble thing, that could be pretty dangerous, right? Let me read you what that would mean. A key determinant of the future of the Petroyuan is the House of Saud, what the House of Saud will do about it. Should Crown Prince and inevitable future king MBS opt to follow Russia's lead, to dub it as a paradigm shift would be the understatement of the century. Yuan-denominated gold contracts will be traded not only in Shanghai and Hong Kong, but also in Dubai. Saudi Arabia is also considering to issue so-called panda bonds after the Emirate of Sharjah is set to take the lead in the Middle East for Chinese interbank bonds. Of course, the prelude to D-Day will be when the House of Saud officially announces it accepts yuan for at least part of its exports to China. A follower of the Austrian School of Economics correctly asserts that for oil-producing nations, higher oil price in the US dollar is not as important as market share. They are increasingly able to choose in which currencies they want to trade. But what's clear is that the House of Saud simply cannot alienate China as one of its top customers. It's Beijing who will dictate future terms. This may include extra pressure for Chinese participation in this IPO. In parallel, Washington would see Riyadh embracing the Petroyuan as the ultimate red line. So this is all Kissinger helped start this whole petrodollar thing with the House of Saudi in 1974. And if this does happen, if they do circumvent the petrodollar, and if it happens while Wingbird Trump is in office, then there's going to be an all-out war. The minute that happens, you better believe suddenly there's going to be a Chinese terrorist and a Russian terrorist attacked an American base, and we have to do something about it. This is a pretty sobering thing. If you read Pepe Escobar is the author of Globalization, How the Globalized World is Dissolving into Liquid War, and Red Zone Blue is a snapshot of Baghdad during the surge. Another book, Obama Does Globalistan, Empire of Chaos. Oh, man. So I'm sorry for a lot of pauses during this one, but I'm just taking it all in here. This is a pretty significant thing. And this explains all of the ramping up of Russiagate. Russia, they're bad. And I don't know, can we trust China and all this other stuff? Because and the Saudis, look, if they got a new benefactor, they'll dump us, man. So you see how tenuous this is? You see how the petrodollar and the carbon bubble and all this other stuff? And why had Al Gore actually run a real campaign in 2000 instead of blaming Ralph Nader because he lost his home state and Bill Clinton's state of Arkansas? After 9/11, maybe we could have actually be looking back and said, wow, 16 years later since 9/11, we're almost completely off of oil, Middle Eastern oil. We wouldn't be facing this situation. But nope, this is what happens, and this is why we need real progressives, guys. And I thank you for paying attention.